Welcome. You are listening to the podcast A Resonant Life, produced by The Time Is Now Productions. I am Mike Thompson, your host and Reflector-in-Chief. In this podcast, we will discuss experiences and insights from living a life devoted to uncovering the authentic self and finding fulfilling purpose from the past, the present, and the future. This podcast is a product of my life and experience, and I'll share my opinions. Opinions between people are various, and we don't all need to hold the same ones. But it is fun to hear the opinions of others as it gives us an opportunity to freshen up our own. If you enjoy and gain insight from listening, please subscribe and share. If you have questions, please email them. And as always, nothing you hear here is a proscription or a prescription. It is a discussion of life and life's internal and external experiences. So let's get to it. Hi, and welcome. Welcome to episode 5 of A Resonant Life. And I'm again happy for everybody who's listening. And I want to do a shout out before we start. I want to shout out to a Twitter friend who really helped inspire me and motivate me to start doing a podcast. He does a podcast called a Bean Pod podcast. And it's really such a charming 30-40 minute podcast. He weekly shares items about his life, the weather, his family, the things he's interested in, and he always shares a song that either he's written himself or that is a favorite of his, and it's really just so charming. So give it a listen, a Bean Pod podcast. And so today we're going to talk about happiness, and we're going to try to define happiness. This is a listener request, and I want to respond to listener requests as much as possible. So the problem with defining happiness, it's like, how do you define any particular emotional state? Pretty difficult. We can define it by what it isn't or what it doesn't feel like, but what it actually is, it's sort of like trying to hold on to water. It just slips through our fingers like water does, or it slips through our mind. We can describe, but we can't define. So you can't really apply the scientific method to defining happiness. But that doesn't mean that we can't explore what happiness means to each of us individually and how we can increase that mindset of happiness in our lives. Not only just increase it, but increase the frequency of it and increase the duration of it. So, we've talked a lot about happiness in the past episodes, how to increase it, how to sustain it, how to share it. So let's try and define it as best we can. So, from a Buddhist perspective, happiness. The first approach or facet of sort of understanding happiness is found in the teachings of Buddha Shakyamuni, specifically the first of the Four Noble Truths. And in a sense, this is a description of happiness or anti-happiness. And it says, the first truth is life, existence is suffering. So suffering is kind of a harsh translation of the word dukkha. We can ease up on that a little bit and think about it as discontent. So life is basically baseline discontent. Discontent is not exactly happiness. There might be moments or flashes of happiness within our lives. Certainly, everybody has moments or flashes of happiness. But baseline, when you add in the sadnesses and the losses and the angers and the everything else, baseline, life is discontent. So why is this? Again, we have to refer back to the idea that we are animals when we still have the DNA and the drives and the instincts of animals way down buried in our nervous systems. And so there's something called fight or flight and the survival instinct. And all these things sort of operate They filter up, these drives filter up through our consciousness and manifest themselves through our more sophisticated brains, our more sophisticated personalities, but they still manifest. And so, the way to end discontent is to kind of cut off the need to accumulate. It's that zero-sum mind that we've talked about in the past, where what's mine is mine, what's yours needs to be mine because there isn't enough to go around, and I need to survive, and I need to survive for my family, my tribe, my clan, my pack, whatever that might be. That's sort of operating underground, unconscious. And so that filters up and it drives our grasping, it drives our aggression, it drives our need to be right, need to dominate, need to control. And in doing so, we get into situations where we create unhappiness. If one is always trying to dominate, those around us will become unhappy with us, and that unhappiness with us will then cause us unhappiness. Or we focus all of our attention on accumulation and remain perpetually dissatisfied. There's so many ways that we undermine the ability to be happy, undermine the opportunity to be happy. So, thus far we've been talking about sort of what prevents us from being happy, what keeps happiness at bay, so to speak. So let's summarize to this point. We've talked about the first noble truth, which is that all life is discontent, and that discontent is, in a sense, driven by our unconscious drives that originate from our sort of animal original DNA instinctual natures, and that those things are sort of zero-sum drives, and our sophisticated minds and consciousnesses and personalities filter that and let it still manifest. And it manifests as doing things that are counter to happiness, alienating others, dominating others, grasping, attaching, wanting, needing, instead of the opposite, which is things that create happiness. So, when are we happy? We're happy when we're having fun. We're happy when we're enjoying time with others. We're happy when we're doing something we enjoy. But these are happinesses that end. They're impermanent. They don't last. They're not sustained. So there must be another kind of happiness that we're after here. And it's not that just we're after it, but it's the happiness, the abiding happiness that was taught by Buddha 2,500 years ago. So let's turn to an old prayer in Buddhism. It's the prayer of the four immeasurables. And it goes like this, with a little modification. May all beings have happiness and the causes of happiness. May they be liberated from suffering and the causes of suffering. May they never be separated from the happiness which is free from sorrow. May they rest in equanimity, free from attachment and aversion. And then I add one more line to that prayer. The line I add is, may I be the cause of it. So let's look at the first line in the context of defining happiness. May all beings have happiness and the causes of happiness. So this is a wish for the happiness of others, and that not just that they have the happiness, but they have the causes and conditions which create happiness for them. This is a wish that we have for others. It's not a wish for ourselves necessarily, it's a wish for others, for other beings. The second line, may they be liberated from suffering and the causes of suffering. This is a wish, a prayer, a hope that other beings, from our best friends, family, neighbors, partners, to strangers, and any other living or sentient being, may they be liberated from suffering and the causes which create suffering. So we don't want others to suffer, and we don't want them to live or exist in the causes and conditions in which they will suffer. The next line, may they never be separated from the happiness which is free from sorrow. So this is pointing at a happiness that is abiding. It's a happiness free from sorrow. Sorrow is also discontent. Sorrow is loss. Sorrow is want and need. Sorrow is fear. So may they never be separated from the happiness which is free from sorrow. So this is a happiness which is not burdened by all of the negative mind states, all of the negative conditions, all of the negative situations which cause happiness in our lives to end. We have fun and then we're not having fun anymore. So are we still happy? Maybe. If we have this abiding happiness free from sorrow. The last line, may they rest in equanimity, free from attachment and aversion. This part of the prayer, this line, this is the coup de grace, so to speak. This is where the answers are, the answers of happiness. What is happiness? Happiness is equanimity. Equanimity is an abiding sense of treating all equally, having the same feeling of or wish for others to be happy, regardless of them being friend, loved, stranger, foe, regardless. That the wish for the happiness of others is unconditional, that it has no distinctions. And that happiness, that equanimity, has no attachment and aversion. It's a little redundant, but being attached to something means you want something, which if you want something, that means you don't have it. If you don't have it and you want it, then you're going to try and get it. And trying to get it, who or what will you step on? Who or what will you exploit? Who or what do you need to take advantage of to get what you want? Doing those things, getting what you want, causes unhappiness. Your baseline is already unhappiness because you're in want and you're doing what you need to do to get it. And then in that trail, in that path, in that roadway to getting what you want, you've caused unhappiness for others. This is the way life really is. It's taking away the filters of what living is. It's removing the rose-colored glasses. When we look at our lives, when we look closely, we are chasing things. We are wanting things. We are wanting more of things. We are wanting more this, more that, more attention, more love, more sex, more money. Want. And we're attached to those things. That's why we want them. And we're averse to those people, situations, conditions which keep us from those things that we want. None of this is a condemnation of anyone or any life or any lifestyle. This is, as Buddhism describes it, what life really is. And in that sense, we have moments where we think we're happy or where we actually might be happy, but the baseline is a state of aversion, a state of attachment, a state of wanting, chasing, needing. And so maybe we get close to a definition of happiness by having an understanding of what it isn't and what prevents it. And so maybe happiness is living with a mindset that doesn't want, that doesn't crave, that doesn't desire. Living with a mindset where all are equal in our eyes, in our minds, in our hearts. In a mindset where we wish nothing but happiness for others. that same happiness. So really, as far as I can tell, happiness is actually what Buddha described as the state of enlightenment. The state where one has no attachments, when one recognizes the impermanence of everything, in that nothing stays the same, everything will change. So it's a state of equanimity, it's a state of equipoise, it's a state where our hearts and minds reach out to others. We've talked about the altruistic mind in, I think, every single episode of the podcast thus far, and really that's the heart and soul of it. Putting others first, setting aside our wants and needs, and doing so consciously, stepping in to a state where we're in want or need, maybe irritation, whatever the state might be, wanting more, worried about money, worried about this, and just stepping back, taking a breath, and then asking, instead of worrying about this, what is it that I can do for somebody else? What can I do that facilitates somebody else's happiness? This gets down to basic things. If one lives with others, whether it's family, friends, it's doing the dishes without being asked. It's cleaning up. It's doing something extra and not expecting anything in return. It's maybe helping out where help wasn't sought, and doing so without any strings attached, without even an anticipation of being thanked for it. It's all very challenging to do these things, to not want thanks, to not want to do things without strings. This is not in our nature. This is contrary to our nature. But yet, doing so, having the mindset of being able to do that, that's probably, ultimately, what abiding happiness is. So it's a big task. It's a lot of work. But we've got our whole lives to try. And what is the upside of all this? Happiness. So, when you find yourself in a state of dissatisfaction, which often manifests as anxiety or irritation, the important thing to do in that moment is to step out of the emotion. The emotion is being driven by that filtered instinctual drives, to step back from that, to step out of it, and to look at it and to say, what is it that you want and how important is that? And what instead could you do for somebody else? If you're having a quarrel with your partner, your spouse, do you really need to be right? Is it that important to be right? Your spouse also probably has a point, or a different view, or a different experience. And so what is right? Step back from that need to be right. Take a breath, and maybe laugh, because what was it all about anyway, this conflict? This isn't to belittle serious conflicts that might exist between people. Nonetheless, most of our conflicts are small things related to us wanting to get our way, us wanting to be right, us wanting something we don't have and maybe the other person does. And so, stepping back from that, the drive to want, the attachment, the grasping, the jealousy, that hunger of wanting, needing, step back from that. And instead, open our hearts up from an inward, selfish, needy place, opening our hearts up to being there for others, to be a perfect help, to be a resource that is infinite and able to extend, reach out, and help others to never be separated from the happiness which is free from sorrow. By helping others in this way with this mindset, we come closer to it ourselves. There's no solo independent project. Everything comes in feedback loops. Everything is a feedback loop. Do a good thing is returned. Do another good thing is returned. Whatever that good is. Good begets good. Happiness begets happiness. Kindness begets kindness. And when we're not appreciated, that's on us because we had an expectation for being appreciated. And as we've seen, or as I think we understand now, happiness doesn't have conditions. And so, this is the project of living a resonant life. Looking inward and trying to open up. Reflecting on how our egocentrism, our neediness, our wantingness, our selfishness affects the rest of the world, affects those around us and our situation and our own internal mindsets of peace and happiness and joy, and trying to clean out the muck so that we're just a bright, shining light of joy, sharing that light with others. It's a big project, and it takes more than one lifetime maybe, but it's a worthy endeavor, and it's something that I'm hoping we'll all continue to work on together. And so I'm looking forward to hearing any feedback and any comments and suggestions or ideas for future episodes. Please email me at mike@resonant.social, and I'll do my very, very best to reflect the feedback in the podcast going forward. And also, as mentioned at the beginning, have a listen to the Bean Pod podcast. It's also a slice of joy. So thank you very much, and I look forward to hearing from you. Please share. Let's grow the Resonant Life Circle. Share the podcast and subscribe it and help others subscribe as well. Thank you so very much.